Hello, good morning. Thank you for joining me live or on replay. Welcome. My name's Rhiannon Morgan. If you're new around here, everyone calls me Ree. Welcome to the channel. Today we are talking all things transition from, if you're in the UK, we call it year six to year seven. It's called different things, I guess, in different, I'm not sure what they call it in America. Which years do you go from? And I think the system's quite different. But today we're talking specifically about moving from what we in the UK would call primary school up to what they call different things in different parts of the country: secondary school, high school, comprehensive school. But talking specifically about that big transition from being that big fish in the small pond, top of year six, moving into year seven, and then that being quite a daunting thing for a lot of kids. And specifically, if you have neurodiverse children, like I do, I have four children with autism, two of which have started, one of which actually has completed secondary school, and then I've got two girls who we've still got to go through all this. So I've been there. If you have got one of your kids you're sending up to secondary school, if you've got that coming up, if you've been through it, let me know in the comments. Also, do let me know that you can hear me okay, because my internet today is on the struggle bus. I do not know what is going on with it, but I thought I'd have to tether my phone to do this live. So if you can see and hear me okay and it's not too glitchy, do let me know, because that would be amazing to know. So yes, I'm sure even if you are in different parts of the world and your children are making transitions to new schools and they're moving up to, because I think high school in America means more like what we'd call A levels here, I think. I'm not entirely sure, but I'm sure the stuff that we're going to be talking about today is going to be relevant whichever school your child is moving up to, when it's a new era and just a new set of adventures, but also challenges. Okay. Like I said, a lot of these tips are going to be relevant to everyone, but specifically if you have got neurodiverse children, if you've got children with autism, ADHD, or anything like that, then these things are going to be especially important to do and know. Now, if your child's actually starting in September, this first one might be a little bit late because it's August and they're obviously starting in a couple of weeks. But if you've got kids that are starting secondary school and it is not imminent, if you're watching or listening to this in the future, perhaps you're tuning on the podcast, because you can just search the Organised Life podcast with Ree on your podcast provider, and you can listen to all these there as well as watch on YouTube. But what I would suggest is to book tours and attend open evenings in advance. Now, whether you've got typical neurospicy children, you're always going to want to do the tours and things. So where we live in the UK, I'm actually going to be going through this with Bella this coming year. So Bella, my eldest daughter, my third baby, is going into year six in September, and they do the whole transition year. So local secondary schools would have open evenings this coming sort of September, October-ish time. Then we have to physically apply for which school we want our kids to go to, and then they get accepted. I think it's generally March time you get the finalised where your kids are actually going to get to go, and then they would be transition things, and all the schools do different transition things. Some schools start doing transition things before year six, which I think is amazing because it really gets the kids familiar with where they're going to be going. But most schools, I think, do most of those transition things when they've actually secured the place. They welcome the children who are actually going to be going there in sort of June, July time for some transition things. But what we did with Will especially, who's now going to year nine, I can't even believe it, but when he was going into year seven, obviously he did the standard open evening, and then we'll do that with Bella too. He had the standard moving up days, but before that, we went for like a quiet chat and look around the school. So I spoke to the Senko or Alenko, so it's either the special educational needs coordinator or additional learning needs coordinator. It's the same thing, I'm pretty sure. I think they just call it different things in different places. But I spoke to them in advance because Will had a statement, which is the old system, as opposed to the new system they moved things onto. There were a lot more sort of formalized meetings and things. But with Bella, she's on the new system, so I will just have to facilitate this myself and contact the school. But I mean, luckily I've already got a relationship with these people because of Will. But if you are sending your child into a school and maybe it's like your eldest child going in, you don't know them at all, feel free to contact the school, to speak to someone in the office, to be asked to be put through specifically to the special educational needs coordinator or the additional learning needs coordinator, so that they can facilitate quieter visits before those moving up days. So I think Will felt so empowered by that tour. It was that we just went after school, we went and had a look around and shown all the different things, like where they eat lunch and all that stuff. So when he went up and did those moving up days, which can be a little bit overwhelming because they kind of bus in all these kids that they're all little year sixes, they're all meeting each other for the first time, and they're all like they all have gone from being that the big fish in the small pond to being like the babies. That in itself, even those moving up days where they really do try and welcome them in, can be a bit overwhelming. So Will actually was out of his group, the one was like, "Oh no, follow me. I know a little bit about where I'm going." And it really gave him confidence. So I definitely recommend just speaking to the school. If obviously it's your child's going in September and you haven't done this yet, do not fret. There'll be loads of photos and things online. I'd love it if schools would do, I don't know, maybe they'd see it as like maybe they'd see it as a security risk, but just sort of off the top of my head, wouldn't it be lovely if there were like videos touring the school that perhaps could be sent to um, kids with additional needs that need sort of the social story element, that need to be prepared? Because I know that my kids with autism specifically just enjoy things so much more and they feel so much more empowered and prepared for things when they know what to expect. So I don't know, maybe it would be a security risk, but to put it publicly, but then it would be really nice to just have like a tour video of someone walking around with a camera going, this is this. Wouldn't that be great? I don't think our school has that, but do you know, I think I might suggest they do it because that's actually a really good idea that they just randomly came up with. I don't know, let me know, does your school offer something like this? But that would be an amazing thing that they could send out to kids, not just, the map you get, but actually a tour. Because I know when my kids are going places like theme parks for the first time, they really love watching like walkthroughs and you need to know what to expect. So if they could have the same thing for school, that would be really, really cool. You can request downloads of the school maps. I mean, maybe these will be in their things they've already been given. Chances are, if your child's starting in September, as in you're watching this live and it's in a couple of weeks' time, they will have been given something already. So check through any paraphernalia they were given on their moving up days. Maybe there'll be maps and things. And they don't necessarily need to memorize it, but it's just good for them to be able to picture the layout and that kind of thing. And if not, it's just going through the school website. There'll be videos and things showing the essence of sort of thing that's going on in school. A lot of schools have YouTube channels now, just showcasing bits and pieces. Obviously, it's very careful and sensitive because not all children are on social media, so not every school is going to have lots and lots on there, but quite often they'll have snippets that you'll be able to look at. Next thing that I want to briefly share with you is I've got something for you. If your children are going back to school, if they're starting school, this is the free checklist that you're gonna need to help you get ready for September. This is the ultimate back to school stock take checklist. Now, obviously, if your child is the first child and they're going to secondary school, you're not going to have much stock to take, as in you probably don't have a lot of the stuff, or maybe you have, maybe you're super organized already, but maybe you haven't got things passed down from other children, but maybe you've been given things from friends and family. Maybe you've picked things up on Facebook Marketplace. Maybe you've bought some stuff already. This list is going to give you just the list of everything they're going to need. The school will probably give you a kit list as well, but this is sort of a really in-depth list to help you think, right, what have I got? What do I need? It helps to stop you overbuying things because you think, okay, I don't need to buy things I already have. For example, I always have things like glue sticks in stock because I buy those in bulk because, lots of children. So I can go through that stock take and not end up repeat buying things I don't actually need to get because, let's face it, we do not need to waste money on buying things we've already got. Okay, so download that list. Anyway, it's completely free and that will help you prepare for your children going back to school, whether they're starting primary school, like we talked about last week, secondary school, or just going back to a general class. Anyway, on to routines and sleep. Now, routine is so important for all kids, but if you've got children with autism, especially important. Over the summer, chances are routine has like gassed off a lot, probably later nights, later mornings, and that's fab. But I would suggest just eking the routine in a little bit more leading up to going back to school and really involving your tween, I guess, or a tween if they're starting secondary school, in thinking about, right, okay, what times are you going to have to be getting up in the morning? So therefore, how much sleep are you going to need in order to be fresh and bright to show up and learn? Because let's face it, if you're groggy in the morning, starting the day by getting out the wrong side of bed and feeling like grumpy and that is not a good way for anyone to start the day. It's definitely not a good start to a new school. So feeling fresh is going to be really important to having a good day, and therefore what time you're going to need to reverse engineer to go to bed in order to achieve that. And in order to go to bed, that time, what time do you need to start like evening routine and wind down and things. So discuss this with your tween, get them involved in this, empower them to make these choices. But then also there's going to be less resistance if they're involved in that decision making for implementing this. And I definitely just don't leave it till the very last minute, because it's a real shock to the system for everyone. Perhaps the last week of the summer, start implementing slightly earlier nights, slightly earlier mornings, especially if there's been no routine at all over the summer. I know that we have an element of routine that we hang on to over the summer because my kids just really do thrive on that routine. But yeah, it just think about where you are at the moment in your house and where you need to get to. You're going to need to start building a little bit of independence over the summer before your kids start to go to secondary school, because maybe will they be walking to school on their own now? Will they be getting on a bus? Will they be picked up by a taxi perhaps? How will they be getting to school? And how does that compare to primary school? So I mean, it's possible, it depends what your child, on your individual child and their needs, but if they're going to be having a lot more freedom when they go to secondary school, how can you look kind of loosening over the summer a little bit and introducing that more freedom in a safe and age appropriate and developmentally appropriate way? It's important to set ground rules. And again, you can start this over the summer with things like phone usage, with checking in. What's going to be the system when they go to secondary school? They're going to be expected to come directly home. How will you contact them? Have a think about what your rules are going to be with all this stuff, and you can start implementing this over the summer. I know that I've already got a video on my channel all about iPhone. I talk about iPhone, and it's all smartphones, but I know iPhones because that's what we use. But I think I did like a 3 video mini series where I talked all about phone usage and teens, and it was kind of in response. There was a documentary where Matt and Emma Willis banned smartphones. So I did like a 3 video mini series talking all about that, some huge points that I feel they missed, and how phone usage can be made as safe as possible for tweens and teens. So check out that video if you haven't seen it yet. I go into that in a lot more detail. But one point I do kind of just want to mention here, just off the top of my head, while we're talking about phones and um, sort of stay in contact with your teen. And that is that it's a really good idea to pick an emoji to have as like a secret between you, that is like, this emoji is my signal to you that I need something to happen. So one example might be, if you pick an emoji, and if they send you this emoji, it means I'm in an uncomfortable situation, I'm with friends, I can't really say to them, guys, I'm really not cool with what you're doing. I want to get out of this and I need your help getting me out of this. And then maybe when you receive that emoji, you can phone your child and be like, what is going on? I can't believe the state on your room. I'm disgusted with you. Where are you? I'm coming to pick you up now. And they can be like, oh, dude, my mum is just the worst. I've got to go. And that way you've got them out of that situation without them being like, oh, why are you being so weird? They don't have to use words that they might find difficult to find to get out of that uncomfortable situation. You can be the bad guy, and you can remove them from that uncomfortable situation. So just have a little chat with your teens and tweens about little signals that you can have between them. Maybe you've got another emoji that means something else. Maybe it means, yeah, I'm doing fine, or I'm just not happy, please ring me, or whatever. But you can just have these short codes between you, and that way if one of their friends sees that they've sent that, they're not going to think it's weird. It's a shorthand. They don't have to write long messages. Maybe one of them's just, it just means, just come fetch me. Like, no questions, just like, find me on GPS and come find me. But again, these are just little family codes worth putting in place with your children. Now on to some practicalities of labeling things. So again, back to my back to school stock take checklist. If you've not got this, seriously, you need to download it, because if you're like me and you have ADHD and your brain is like, what have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? Constantly, then the checklist is literally the only way to get past that. So if you go to mummyoffour.com/school checklist, that way when you're lying awake thinking, Oh, what have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? You can think, right, I'm going to glance over this checklist before I go to bed. I'm going to see that I've ticked all this stuff and I can see that I've done it and I can stop panicking. And that's why I really love checklists for packing, for all the things, so that it just stops me from panicking. But basically, I one of the things I want to talk about obviously is the uniform system that we use. Now, I have got a really in-depth workshop which takes you through this entire workbook, which is the Organised Back to School Planner. And that's inside of my Organised Life Club. So if you go to mummy4.com/school planner, that takes you through absolutely everything you need to do to get ready for back to school, regardless of your child's age, step by step. You go through that together. It's the planner. There's also attached in there the kids printable pages. So all of that is in there. That's mummy4.com/school planner. But in brief, we're going to just sort of run through these because otherwise we'll be here all day. The sort of summarizing some of the things we talk about in the workshop. Label absolutely everything, guys. Literally everything. If you ever want to see it again, you're going to want to label it, because you might think your child's going to recognize their own jumper. They're not. Okay, they're not. You might think they're a bit older now, they're not going to lose so much stuff. You're probably wrong. um, just if you ever want to see anything again, and let's face it, stuff is expensive. We do not want to have to buy stuff again for fun. Then just get everything labeled. I love the labels that we get from my name tags. If you go to mummy4.com/labels, then yeah, um that will get you the labels that I use, and you can stick those inside the care labels of clothing. You can stick them on like hard surfaces, lunchbox and things, and after 24 hours they are machine washable and dishwasher safe. Flipping love those things. Label everything that you ever want to see again, and future you will thank you, because it's amazing how much things don't necessarily turn up straight away in lost property, but eventually you will kind of get things back. For secondary school purposes, I tend to put the child's name and their form on the labels. Generally, I have the child's name and my phone number, or you can just put your family name. So you can put like Morgan family and the phone number. And that way, if things are going beyond school, then you also have a chance of getting them back there too. Okay, I tend to go for the 5 sets of uniform rule as a rule. And this is obviously going to depend on your specific child. If you've got one of those kids that wants to play football every single day and they come home head to toe in mud, then they're literally going to need new head to toe every single day. If you've got kids that always throw food down themselves at lunchtime, then they're gonna need new sets every single day. If you've got kids that are slightly less messy, then like perhaps they need a fresh like polo shirt or shirt every day that's actually next to their body that they're sweating in. Maybe they don't necessarily need 5 jumpers, but to be safe, I'd highly recommend just having 5 of everything. This can be more challenging if schools are really fussy about having badged things. I know some schools are, some schools are not. If you can get away with things without the badges, you can just have the plain jumpers. They're a lot more affordable. You can get them in supermarkets. Not affiliated with any of them, but I tend to buy from Georgia Asda just because I have done before and the stuff is washed really well and they've had a good range. But if you've got to have badged stuff and you've got to get it from the school, I know some places you can literally buy it from one place and it's really expensive. Maybe they have blazers and things and they're quite expensive. Check out Facebook Marketplace. People think about Vinted for pre-loved uniform, and often the schools themselves have uniform shops or swap shops for pre-loved items that it's just well worth checking out that. And then that way you can get 5 of everything. You have a slot in your child's wardrobe, or a hanger or whatever. You just have 5 of them and you're like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Get them to sort all that on the weekend, and then you're not having, "Mum, I can't find my jumper," on the morning of trying to get to school, and then they're not going to be in trouble. Because I think the big difference is when they go to secondary school, a lot more onus is put on the child, and the child themselves is more likely to get in trouble for not having the right stuff. So we need to help facilitate the children, hopefully having the best possible opportunity to make sure they've got everything they need so they don't get in trouble, especially as little year sevens. So yeah, we organise all that on the weekend during our weekend reset, and then that makes mornings just so much easier. I can't even tell you. So homework and apps. It's worth finding out from the school how often homework's going to be, how it's going to be delivered. Are they going to be using class charts, squiggles, seesaws, dojos? There'll be 11 billion different apps. My recommendation would be to use something like the Notes app in your phone, and every time you get sent something, just put it all in one place, one folder. So maybe it's a physical folder. So I have like my Organised Life binder, which lives in my office. So if I'm sent physical stuff, I can put in there, or I can have one page in here with all of the passwords and stuff like that. But also you could just have a note in your phone, and you can actually lock notes. I don't know about non-iPhone things, but you could have a locked note inside of your phone for, obviously, if it's passwords and things, but just to put all of the login information, because like my kids would be given like a login information to like Hub, which is the Welsh main, login education thing, and then they'll have a parents one for class charts or seesaw or dojos or whatever. There's just so many different ones, and all the schools use different things. But quite often there'll be quite a few different apps even within one school, and sometimes your phone will randomly boot you out. You have like a phone update or something, and then suddenly you can't sign in, and then halfway through the year that's a problem. So make sure you keep you don't just sign into the app, you actually save the information for all of that, because otherwise you're going to end up with a kid that's like not doing the homework and getting in trouble because they can't sign into the apps. So save all those. Encourage your children to at least look at homework and plan out when it's going to be done the night they get it. Now, this is obviously not always going to be practical, because maybe one piece of homework is going to take multiple days. Maybe some evenings are too chaotic, extracurricular activities and things. We're going to talk about that next week, because which activities to choose and overscheduling our kids and all that. That's a whole other conversation. But basically, at least if we can look at which homework needs to be done and at least attempt to start it when time and space allows and children not too overstimulated and not melting down and things, if we can at least look at it and schedule in what it is and when it needs to be done on the night that we get it, that's going to be a huge winner. Which brings me to the folder method that we use. So what I use for my kids in secondary school, I use this system. If someone had done this with me when I was in school, because clearly I've always had ADHD and I didn't realise, but I would not have been that kid that was always like, well, Rhiannon's very bright, but I wish she'd try harder. I wish she'd remember her homework. I wish she'd. I would have just actually been able to have the homework and things. I was that kid that would not even think about the homework until I was sitting back in that classroom the next week, and they're like, get out your homework. And I'd be like, do we have homework? Because I literally haven't thought about it at all since I was last year. And so to avoid all of that, we have the folder system. So I use a popper folder. We have one per subject plus an additional one for kind of form room pastoral. And then the system is literally just pack the folders for the subjects. They have six subjects a day. They just pack the six folders, the maths, English, science, whatever. Even if it's empty, they take it to school, because chances are maybe they won't necessarily have a sheet or a folder or a booklet or something one day, and then they'll be given something. And if they're given a science booklet and they don't have a folder to put it in, it's going to be dogged and disgusting. And then there's something spilt on it. It's just going to be a whole mess. So if they have these folders, this system allows them to not lose things, to actually have a chance at knowing what the homework is, because they just have to look in the folder to see what there is. They just take out that folder and plonk it on the desk in the lesson, and then they scoop up at the end of the lesson everything that they've been given, the workbooks, the folders, the exercise books, they plonk them all back in, and everything is there together. So nothing's getting lost, nothing's getting all scrumpled. And because I just would be given a sheet, it would be like scrumpled in the bottom of my bag, and then eventually it would just go in the bin because you couldn't even read it because it was such a mess. So my so far this system's been amazing. So Dylan's gone all through, he's now in university, he's actually going in to do his masters. So he's gone all through secondary school, and actually even with his we didn't know he had autism at the time, but he was diagnosed with autism. He, like, almost 1,000,000% has ADHD, so far undiagnosed. But was, from what I can tell now, it seems quite apparent he does have ADHD, and yet he still managed to stay on top of things with this system. And what I used to say is, look, just empty bag, and then pack your bag, and just show me you've done it, or let me know you've done it, and then you can go do whatever you want to do, because that way any tasks have been like looked at and assessed at when they need to be done for homework and things. And also the bag is packed for the next day, so they're not going to be showing up, because the other thing that sometimes happens in secondary schools, they start putting more onus on the kids to have the right stuff, and sometimes they get negative marks or detentions or whatever if they don't have the right stuff with them. And like, Will's been amazing with this as well. He's always got the right stuff with him. He's quite self-sufficient with it. He will sort of quite naturally because it's part of his routine now, pack his bag when he gets home, which is amazing. So the system works, literally just set it. Where I'm actually going to do it with Will later. It's quite set it and forget it. Then it's just have, folder per subject. You can write on the folders in just like sticky labels. You can use a label maker. You can go to town. But it's quite handy when they get their timetable. You can write on it the name of the subject, but also you can put the teacher's name. Obviously, you need to put your child's name in the form in case they lose the folder, but you can also put the teacher's name, and you can also put the time of the week, as in like Monday, 10 o'clock, room 4B or whatever. And you can put all that on the folder so they know exactly which folders they need to pack, as well as looking at the timetable. They can look at their folders too. So bag, kit, and kit systems. So we have a school bag station by the front door where kids can leave things. Will actually tends to take his bag just up to his room to pack it and just sort of leaves it up there now, which is fine. It's kind of whatever works. The girls definitely leave theirs. They're in primary school, leave theirs downstairs. But as Will goes upstairs to his homework, he just has a spot in his room now. He leaves his bag, but he still has a box by the front door if he wants to leave anything. But yeah, that's just the system that works, and it just depends what works for your child. But I definitely recommend having something by the front door where you can, dump things. My kids then get out the exact things they need to take to school, and they leave them by the front door the morning of. They come down in the morning and pop out the bags before they have breakfast. But we definitely like to check things on the weekend and then the night before to kind of belt and braces that. We really like to use a shared calendar amongst the family just to kind of figure out exactly what is going on so everyone knows. And on the shared calendar, I put the time that school starts and the time that school finishes as well. And there are reminders of that. And it actually has the travel time for how long it's going to take to get to a place. And it's just nice to have that if you're looking at the calendar to see what time kids are going to be at school, what time they're back, and then you can fit other things around that. And then the kids know, and again, my kids, they have autism, they like to know what's going on. They can look at the calendar and see what is going on for extracurricular activities as well as school things. And such as inset days. I know our primary school, I don't think the secondary school do it yet, but the girls' primary school, I think it might be because I set it up actually, I've got a Google calendar that you can just subscribe to, and you can literally press the button and that will drop into my phone and all the school events will be in there, which is really, really handy. But if your school doesn't have this, make sure you're putting all those calendar dates in your diary as soon as possible, because definitely if you've got kids in different schools, the chances of the inset days being on the same day are unfortunately slim to none. And I know some kids, or some families rather, when they've got kids in schools, like perhaps on the border of two towns, they'll sometimes even have different half terms, which is really, really stressful. But make sure you get those dates in your diary as soon as possible. So communication and advocacy as your kids are moving up to year 7. Um, I've always kind of had the chat with my children saying, look, whatever happens, whether you think you've done something wrong, whatever, as long as you are honest with me and you come to me, I can always help you. Um, when there is honesty, and you can always say, well, look, my child doesn't lie to me. And that is a really powerful thing to be able to say and to reinforce this, like, just come to me, whatever it is, I can help you. Then that's always been my message with the children. And I hope it means that they can come to me with whatever, and they know I will always support them. I won't be cross, and I'm always on their team. I think it's always important for them to know that, because I think when you go up to this big school, suddenly things can seem really big, and maybe when there isn't honesty and they feel they can't come to you, then things can spiral quite dramatically, and that can be quite stressful for everyone involved. Um, I like to also try and remind my children to ask for what they need and not just state the problem. And we kind of practice this at home. So my kids will be like, um, "This is this isn't working, or this is broken, or whatever." And it's like, so rather than just jumping in and fixing something and providing a solution immediately, what I'm trying to do with them and have been trying to do for some years is say, well, what is it you actually need from me? Because I think when your kids go to secondary school, they go from having perhaps one teacher that knows them incredibly well, maybe in a class of 30, to having a different teacher every single hour. And those teachers can't possibly know your child as well. So they need to be able to speak up and advocate for themselves a bit more. So I encourage my children at home. I'm like, okay, so that's the problem. What do you need from me? What do you need to ask me for? And then hopefully then they're sort of training their brains to be able to ask other adults for those things. Small things as well, like just getting the children to, if we're out for food, order their own food and actually speak to the person who's taking the order. Asking them to perhaps open the door and hand something to the postman, and just have these other interactions that maybe are pushing them slightly outside of their comfort zone, but building sort of a bit of resilience and practicing for when they're going to have to speak to other adults, all these random teachers, when they go to secondary school. So a few lessons and a few kind of things I say to my kids that generally I've picked up and help me, so hopefully help them too. And one of them, I think it was in the Mel Robbins book, the Let Them Theory, or was it 5 Second Rule? Anyway, I'm pretty sure it was from a Mel Robbins book, and this was reframing nerves as excitement. So if you think about how you feel when you're nervous, you feel like butterflies in your tummy, your heart's racing. But how do you feel when you're excited? You got butterflies in your tummy and your heart's racing. So if you can tell yourself, I'm not nervous, I'm excited, that's a really different energy, and it can be nerve-wracking starting a new school, but if you can reframe that as excitement, then that's going to feel a whole lot better. Always ask them to encourage them to ask for help if they don't understand something. Remind them those teachers are there to help them, not to tell them off, and they're there to support them and to just really, really encourage that. Um, Teachers expect questions. It shows that you're interested. It's not silly to ask questions. It shows that you're engaged, and that's important to know. And there are no silly questions. Like, the silly thing to do is just to struggle in silence. Pack any support that your kids are going to need, like fidget toys and then maybe ear defenders. Um, that, whatever they're going to be needing, make sure that that is packed. Reassure them it's okay to take a moment. Maybe find out with your child's form teacher who it's a really good idea to strike up a relationship with, just the Elenco and your child's form teacher. Obviously, you're not going to have a close relationship with every single teacher, but if you've got a relationship with the support staff, then that's going to be really helpful. And find out if they can have some sort of code for if they need a few minutes. Maybe it's some like um, a, a card they put on the teacher's desk or whatever. So it's not some teacher going, "Oh, why is that kid just walking out the classroom?" Everyone is aware that it's taking care of your child, because let's face it, they are still taking care of your child, even though they're getting bigger. That if they need a minute, then that's the system. And just remind them that everyone in year seven is brand new at this, and chances are the people that they go into school with, that are friends, they won't necessarily be the ones they stick with all the way through, because they're going to make so many amazing new friends. They're going to meet so many more people, and there's going to be a wider pool of people, and you're more likely to find people that you've actually got something in common with the more people that you actually get to mix with. From a parental involvement point of view, it's so important, especially if you've got neurospicy kids, to really stay on top of communication and keep those communication channels open with the school. This is so much harder because in primary school, you drop your child off and you like see the teacher in the morning and then you see him in the afternoon, and then suddenly it's this massive jump, and maybe you don't even go to the school that much. But do know that it's okay to phone and speak to people, especially if your child's got additional needs, to have regular meetings, even if you're not called in for them. If you can ask to go in and chat to any form teacher or support staff, you do not have to wait for parents' evening to raise any concerns. Remember that the communication channels should be kept open, because at the end of the day, everyone wants what's best for your child. Do your weekly reset with checking through bags, through your homework stuff, through all the uniform and things. It's going to make such a difference. And just acknowledge really that this is a big emotional transition for your child. Chances are it's not going to be as scary as anyone ever thinks it is, because often um, we build things up so much in our minds, and I always think there's like relief on the other side of a difficult conversation, or an event that we've built up too much in our minds. And I can't remember who said the quote, but and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, I've been through a lot in my life, and some of those things actually happened. And what that's kind of referring to is all these situations and these scenarios that go through our head of, what if this, what if that? And I'm sure your child's thinking all these things, what if this, what if that? But if you, like me, are a parent with a child with additional needs, then you'll be going through these scenarios. If you're anything like me, like, oh, what if this happens? What if this happens? And you're going to build it up so much in your head as well, and you're going to feel really worried. I think we just have to remember that we are strong for our kids, and whatever happens, we will make sure that our children are okay. If that means we've got to go to the school more, we've got to put things in place, we've got to keep communication open, we've got to do that a little bit more than parents with neurotypical children. We've got to advocate for them that little bit more. We've got to be that bit more involved in making sure things are in place to keep them happy. Then that's what we will do, because we will always fight for our babies. Okay, we will always fight for our babies. So make sure you grab the free checklist, mummy4.com/school checklist, um, because ultimately, the more prepared you are for school, the easier the transition is going to be, because there's nothing worse than being in secondary school and not having the right stuff and that being really stressful. And it's like, it's the atomic habits, isn't it? Of like doing all the tiny little things just to grease the wheels. And no one thing is going to make a massive, massive difference. But if you make sure they've got the right stuff, the right uniform, and they're prepared, and they've had a look around the school, and you keeping in touch with things, and you make sure that they're signed into all the apps and all the things, then you're just less likely to have to deal with meltdowns. Whereas a few of these really small things, which might seem tiny to other children, maybe a neurotypical child will be totally unbothered that they can't sign into an app. And maybe they're like, oh, well, I can't do the homework because I don't know what it is. Fine. Maybe your child with autism will fixate on that, and that will totally ruin their day. And then things will snowball and spiral. So all these tiny little things all add up to make sure our children are happy. And then if you really want that extra support with your back to school, and indeed so many different things, because we do different workshops every single month inside of the Organised Life Club. If you go to mummyoffour.com/school planner, that will get you your copy of the complete back to school planner and the workshop, and access to everything else inside of the Organised Life Club. Now, we are very nearly at the end of August, but as you are here, it's just you and me, okay? It's just you and me. I've got something for you. If you go to mummyoffour.com/OLC, and you put in code OLC, so that's AUGOLC20, that code will get you 20% off either your first month or the first year inside of the Organised Life Club. And inside of the Organised Life Club, we have monthly planning parties where we take on your spicy brains. Like, if you've got ADHD like me, you need this. And we reflect on the previous month, and there are new planning pages every month. And we look ahead to the month coming, and we say, right, what do we need to do? What do we need to organise? And we do that together, and we hold each other accountable. And then every month there's a new workshop, there's a new workbook to work through different areas of your life. So you can already go back through the others. There's the routine assessment workshop. We go through all the different areas of your life and see which areas you want to declutter routine wise, and to slick up and to improve and to just maximise and make life easier. There's the mealtime routine workshop and workbook, where you can go through everything, and that covers everything from fussy eating to meal planning to getting everyone to eat similar foods and eating at the same time, organising when you're eating, how you're eating, just making everything smoother. In September, we are doing a weekend reset routine workshop. I can't wait for that. I've just been working on the workbook for that today. I'm just so thrilled with that. I can't wait to share all that with you. I've got the Autism Journey Journal is inside of there. So if you are going through your own autism assessment stuff with your kids, then that is the complete workbook, and that will really help you when it comes to meeting with professionals and things. Because I think one of the things I found when I was going through the autism assessments every time was I just felt like really blindsided by certain things they were asking me, and just to have one place to keep all the information together, that would have been so empowering. And so that's what we've put together there. Yeah, and we just, you also get early access to videos, secret podcasts, all the things. And it's just the place for all the resources that you need. If you've got a bit of a neurospicy family, if like me, you just feel like you need it, there's that bit more you've got to do compared to neurotypical families. And if like me, you perhaps got a touch of ADHD as well, and staying on top of things doesn't come supernaturally to you, all the resources in there will support you. So that's mummyoffour.com/OLC. So thanks for joining me for another live, or on the podcast, on replay, on live, wherever you've joined, and I shall see you guys in the next one. Bye.